In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful, we give him praise and thanks for his mercy and his goodness to the human family. If all the trees upon the earth were pens to write with, and if all the oceans were ink, and then another 7 oceans to add to its supply, the writing would still not be enough to explain the glory of God, for he's the exalted, all-powerful, all-wise. Even if I lived to be 1,000, that still would not be enough to thank God for his many blessings and gifts. We praise no other in our good fortune, and we confide in no other in our time of need. He is one. We thank him for the Metu Netter, scriptures, oracles, and writings from Africa that came way before Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The Metu Netter. We thank him for Moses in the Torah, Jesus in the Gospel, and Muhammad ibn Allah in the Quran. I greet everyone in words of peace. To my Christian family, praise the Lord. To my Muslim family, assalamu alaikum. To my Hebrew Israelite family, shalom. To my people in the streets, what's good with you? And to my Black conscious family, hotep. This is Brother Shareef with the Hour of Power. Go to Hour of Power, Shareef Hamid, Shareef Hameed, Hour of Power, Shareef Hamid. Subscribe and share. Subscribe and share the channel so we can continue to lift the mind, bodies, and soul of our people. Before we get into our topic today, which is called Exposing the Dark History of Boston, Massachusetts, I want to say rest in peace to a brother who has now transitioned into the realm of the ancestors, Baba Dick Gregory. Baba Dick Gregory passed away last night, I believe. He was having some issues, health issues this week with his heart. And at the age of 84, he is among the realm of ancestors. He's an educator, a writer, an author, a comedian, a civil rights activist, just a wonderful, wonderful brother. He gave us so much knowledge and wisdom. He will be sorely, sorely missed. 2 things that really stick out with him for me that really made me start following him and taking in his wisdom is back in 2000, 2001. I may not have the years correct. They had the crisis there in Washington, D.C. with this D.C. sniper. Supposedly some individuals was somewhere and they were just picking people off left and right. Black people, white people, people at schools, gas stations, and they labeled it the DC sniper. Of course, they caught this man named John Muhammad, and he had supposedly a young person with him named Lee Malvo, a young guy. At that time, he was only 17. They executed John Muhammad. I think Lee Malvo is still in prison. But my point is, Baba Dick Gregory really gave some deep insight on what he believed, and he had some facts to back up that a lot of people don't know about this supposed DC sniper thing. That was just amazing. Another thing was, you could look it up on YouTube. It's called The Murder of MLK, how Baba Dick Gregory exposed what really happened at the Lorraine Motel in 1968 with the assassination of Martin Luther King. He talked about how his autopsy report showed he had gunshot wounds in his groin and under his neck, which shows and proves that the gunshots didn't come from some balcony that everyone was pointing at. The gunshots came from the first floor. A police officer, a Memphis police officer, was seen shooting Martin Luther King from the first floor, and that's why he had gunshot wounds under his neck and in his groin. If someone shot you from a balcony several feet away up there, how you get gunshot wounds under your neck and in your groin? And then he had a preacher standing beside him by the name of Reverend Samuel Kyles, and he admitted and slipped up in this interview and said, yeah, I stepped to the side so they could have a clear shot of him. This Samuel Kyles. And this messy Jesse Jackson pointing up there when they know that shot didn't come from up there. It ain't my words. Listen to our ancestor, Baba Dick Gregory. So, brother, we miss you already. And you only been with the ancestors one day. We won't forget you. I will do the best I can. And those who are conscious will do the best we can to keep your legacy going. Salute to you. May you rest in peace. So, today's topic is about it's protesters in Boston, Massachusetts now. And they're counter protesters. And, you know, this KKK, these wild street thugs, as my good brother Dr. Umar labeled him. He actually contacted me the other day about him coming here to Durham. These wild street thugs in Charlottesville, Virginia, disturbing the peace, causing terror. Now they threaten to come right here in Durham, North Carolina, where I'm at. Just on Friday, they almost had to shut the city down. It was like a state of emergency. They showed up there 9-10 o'clock in the morning, calling black women bees and all kind of stuff. And they had to shut down businesses and office. A good brother of mine said he was actually locked in his office because they wouldn't let him out. These wild street thugs. And then they threatened to come there 4 o'clock later on that day, and hundreds of people, I was one of them, was downtown. I wasn't protesting, I was more reporting for my channel. Whatever, I'm not faulting anyone, but hundreds of people were in downtown Durham, right here in Durham, counter protesting the KKK. It was absolutely bananas there. And I was on Facebook Live. People were on there threatening me. All I'm doing is reporting what's going on. So this is spiraling out of control. Now you have counter protesters in Boston, Massachusetts, as we speak. But my topic today and my thing is, do they know that, number one, in every city and state in the United States, they have symbols, statues, parks, town halls, and schools that commemorate people who have upheld slavery and oppression. And Boston, Massachusetts is one of the worst ones. I'm just wondering, the protesters there, do they know this? So I want to expose this and explain this today about the amount of symbols, parks, statues, town halls, schools that represent slave owners and people of oppression. So are we going to go tear those places down? Because if you get rid of one, you might as well get rid of them all. Boston, Massachusetts. So I want to go through these real quick with facts and let you know that Boston is one of the worst places of representing slave owners and people of oppression. Not hundreds of years ago, right now. So here we go. The town of Amherst. This is in Boston, Massachusetts. Amherst College is named after a man called Jeffrey Amherst. He lived from 1717 to 1797. He was a commander-in-chief in the British Armed Forces in North America and is credited with the downfall of France, Canada, and the British Empire. This is Sir Jeffrey Amherst. Do you know he spread smallpox amongst the Native Americans, which is better known as chemical and biological warfare? This is this Jeffrey Amherst. He has a town and a college named after him called Amherst College. He spread smallpox amongst the Native Americans. Smallpox, chemical and biological warfare. I'm going to move fast because I want to get across these as many as I can. Look what he said about the Native Americans. This is Sir Jeffrey Amherst. He said the Native Americans is one of the vilest race of human beings that ever infested the earth, and whose riddance from the earth would be a meritorious act, and for the good of mankind, and therefore take no prisoners, put them to death if they fall into your hands. This is what this Jeffrey Amherst said, and he is accredited, even though they don't teach it in the schools, with spreading smallpox amongst the Native Americans back in the 1700s. And in Boston, in Massachusetts, he has a town called the town of Amherst and Amherst College. Very interesting. Are y'all gonna protest there and get rid of that college and demolish the town? If you get rid of one, you might as well get rid of them all. Moving along, let's look at this interesting human being, if you want to call him that. Christopher Columbus. From 1451 to 1506, he terrorized this world. That's right, when he was born, it was a terror. He's credited with discovering the New World when he never actually came here. He brought a bunch of street thugs with him, which were prisoners, brought them here to see if the world was flat, even though he never came here. He only went to like Jamaica and Haiti. Brought syphilis, gonorrhea, smallpox here was raping children, women, men, women. He was a molester. He was a pedophile, and he spread disease, and he was a murderer and enslaved people. When the criminals came here with him, they were like, man, I thought we were coming to see if it was a new world. When they went back to Queen Elizabeth in England, they actually locked him up. He was in chains in front of Queen Elizabeth. She said, I didn't send you over there for that. He said, well, wait a minute. We can enslave these people in this supposed new world. So she sent him back on a second expedition. This is in his own writings. He starved dogs for 3 days and let them run into the islands with the Native Americans and rip them apart. This is what he did. Not America, in the islands like Jamaica and Haiti. Starved dogs for 3 days and let them run wild into the islands and ripped the Native Americans apart. Their flesh. This is what this man did. And he was a rapist. Look what one of his street thugs said. This is in Christopher Columbus's own writings. Listen to this. While I was in a boat, this is in Christopher Columbus writings, I captured a very beautiful Carib woman, meaning Caribbean, whom said Lord Admiral gave to me, and with whom, having taken her into my cabin, and she being naked and according to her own custom, I conceived desire to take pleasure with her. I wanted to put my desire into execution, but she did not want it. Rape. And treated me with her fingernails in such a manner that I wish I never had begun. But seeing that she didn't want it, I took a rope and thrashed her well, and for which she raised an unheard scream that you would not have believed. Your ears wouldn't have been able to take it. That's what Christopher Columbus said in his own writings. It's the actual first recorded rape in the New World. The first, I ain't say it was the first rape, it was the first recorded rape. Christopher Columbus, it says in nearly every Massachusetts city, there's an avenue or a square named after Christopher Columbus. In every city or town, Columbus Street, Columbus Avenue, Columbus University. Are we going to get rid of these streets? Are we going to get rid of these universities? If you get rid of one, you might as well get rid of them all. Moving along, still talking about Massachusetts. Have you ever heard of Faneuil Hall? Faneuil Hall is named after Peter Faneuil from 1700 to 1743. He didn't live too long, thank God. This Faneuil Hall, which is like a trading or a market in Boston, is named after this Faneuil. He was a slave owner, and he got the slaves from his uncle Andrew Faneuil, and they traded human beings from whites from Africa in Boston back in the 1700s. He even had a ship named the Jolly Bachelor. This Peter Faneuil, he had a ship nicknamed the Jolly Bachelor, which meant he was raping children. He was a pedophile. Again, Faneuil Hall in Boston, Massachusetts, which is still there. And he traded at least 150 black slaves. They're black African slaves. He traded them for $150 each. And he had at least a net worth way up in the thousands of 5 black African slaves. It's Peter Faneuil, and it's called Faneuil Hall. Are we going to get rid of Faneuil Hall in Boston? If you get rid of one, you might as well get rid of them all. Moving along, y'all have heard of Ben Franklin, the kite flying, the founding father of America, Ben Franklin. Where I'm from, it's things named after him. Got parks named after him. Franklin Park, county of Franklin in Boston, Massachusetts. Well, he used to advertise black slaves in newspapers, and he traded black slaves from Philadelphia as commodity. Used to trade them. Ben Franklin with the kite. And he had slaves for at least 30 years. He used to trade slaves. This Ben Franklin. And to this day, an annual kite festival takes place in Dorchester, Franklin Park in Boston, Massachusetts. Ben Franklin, a slave owner, and he used to advertise the selling of slaves in the newspaper. And they got a goddamn park named after him. And one of his slaves was named Jamia, George, and Peter. Those are some of his well-known slaves, and he was probably raping them. That's Ben Franklin. Very interesting. Moving along, have you ever heard of John Hancock? John Hancock has a building and a town in Boston, Massachusetts named after him. He lived from 1737 to 1793, and he had his family lineage is listed as one of the 162 leading slave-holding families in the colonial New England. He kept black slaves named Molly, Agnes, Cato, Prince Holmes, Cambridge, and Hannibal. And he had white servants named Hannah and Betsy. This is this John Hancock. You hear this, put your John Hancock, meaning your signature. He was a founding father. And he had slave ships named Liberty, Boston Packet, and Lydia. Liberty, Boston Packet, and Lydia. And he is one of the 162 leading slave owner families in New England, Boston, Massachusetts, because Massachusetts is a New England state. Very interesting. The town of Hancock and a John Hancock building in Boston, Massachusetts. Are y'all going to get rid of the John Hancock building? If you get rid of one, you got to get rid of them all. Moving along. How about Jefferson Street in Boston, Massachusetts? Jefferson Street in Boston, Massachusetts. Named after who? Thomas Jefferson. He owned 154 slaves on the 10,000 acre land in Virginia. Back to Virginia again. How come most of the black people in America have the last name Jefferson? But we only make up 12 to 13% of the population. But they came out with a study that said 85, 90% of the people in America with the last name Jefferson are black. Why? Because he was raping black women. Had 154 slaves on a 10-acre land there in Virginia. Thomas Jefferson. And he got Jefferson Street. Are we going to get rid of Jefferson Street? If you get rid of one, you got to get rid of them all. Very, very interesting. And I could go on and on and on. Let's go to some schools and then I'll be done. Yes, some schools in Massachusetts named after slave owners. Which one of them? Samuel Adams School in East Boston. There are schools in East Boston named after Samuel Adams. Who was he? He held slaves, and he had a slave named Old Surrey, a black woman, for 50 years. And he was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. A signer of the Declaration of Independence, and had a slave named Old Surrey, a black woman who he held captive against her will for nearly 50 years. Yes, this is Samuel Adams, a signer of the Declaration of Independence. And he's known for freedom fighting, and his face is plastered on beer bottles with his name, and he held slaves and held a sister and other slaves, but the most well known is Old Surrey. Very interesting, Samuel Adams, a slave owner. Look at this other school, more schools in Dorchester, Massachusetts, named after a man named Grover Cleveland. He lived from 1837 to 1908, and he was the 22nd and the 24th president of the United States. Look what he said about black people. He said, the rebuilding of the South after the Civil War was a tragic scar and a product of ignorant blacks, among other things. It was a mistake. And for Lincoln to have given blacks the rights to citizenship and granting them their voting rights was a mistake. He hated black people. Again, Grover Cleveland has Grover Cleveland schools named after him in Dorchester, Massachusetts. He was the 22nd and 24th president, and he hated blacks, and he upheld slavery and said what Lincoln did, which he didn't do much of anything. He didn't emancipate no slaves. He was just trying to save the Union. But what he thought Lincoln did, he said it was a mistake. And he upheld slavery. Grover Cleveland. And he said blacks were ignorant, vicious, lazy, and more. Grover Cleveland, the 22nd and 24th president. Are you going to get rid of them school systems protesters? If you get rid of one, you might as well get rid of them all. Finishing up. More school systems and school districts named after slave owners. Ralph Waldo Emerson School in Roxbury, Massachusetts. He lived from 1803 to 1882. And look what he said about black people. He went to Harvard Divinity School. So he's supposed to be a spiritual man. Look what he said about black people. It's better to hold the Negro race an inch under the water than an inch over the water. This is what Ralph Waldo Emerson said. It's schools in Roxbury, Massachusetts named after him. And he said it's better to hold the Negro race an inch underwater than an inch over the water. Oh, really? He said the way to wash the Negro white is to educate them in the white man's useful fine arts and ethics. Civilized arts are found to be attractive to the wild Negro and disagreeable to the wild Indian. This is what he said because they got schools named after him. Listen to what he said and connect this to what's going on now. The way to wash the Negro white is to educate him in the white man's useful fine arts, in his ethics. Civilized arts are found to be attractive to the wild Negro and disagreeable to the wild Indian. And what does he get? Ralph Waldo Emerson School in Roxbury, Massachusetts. Are we going to get rid of them schools? If you get rid of one, you might as well get rid of them all. The deep, dark racism in history of Boston, Massachusetts, the Bay State. So y'all are protesting, all the protesters. I know you mean well, I guess. If you're going to get rid of the statue of Robert General Lee, you might as well be like Beyonce and go on a nationwide tour. Be like Jay-Z, go on a nationwide tour, start at any state that you want, and start knocking down all these statues, all this symbolism, town halls, schools, markets that are named after slave owners, people who captured African slaves and oppressors. They're all over the place in every city, every town, streets, avenues, colleges, everything named after. We might as well just demolish this whole country. Where are you getting this from, Brother Shareef? I always have my proof. The history, the hidden history of Massachusetts. The hidden history of Massachusetts. Get the book. It's all in here. And I just named a few. General Sir Jeffrey Amherst spread smallpox among Native Americans. Christopher Columbus brought syphilis and gonorrhea here. He was a pedophile, a homosexual, raping children and spread disease. He ain't come to know America. The Native Americans and blacks were here thousands of years before he even thought about coming here, and he never came here. We were trading and doing business here. Look up the Alamic race. Get the book They Came Before Columbus by Ivan Van Sertima. Gives actual proof that blacks and Native Americans were here long before Columbus in some 1492, and he never came here. He only came to the islands like Haiti and Jamaica. Thomas Jefferson, Samuel Adams, Quincy Adams. You can go on and on and on. In this book, The Hidden History of Massachusetts, it shows that all throughout their towns and town halls and streets and colleges and statues named after slave owners. They might as well destroy the whole town. You can go to Pennsylvania, Chicago, wherever you want to go. So it isn't so much the statues, that's the symbolism of them showing you these are their heroes. It's the white supremacy, the hidden white supremacy that we need to get rid of. The statues can stand. But what about white supremacy? Incarceration, black infant mortality rates, right? joblessness, homelessness. What about that? Police brutality. That's the system that needs to be brought down. A statue is an inanimate object that just shows what they're thinking. We need to go after the white supremacy. I thank you for listening. I hope this has opened your eyes and given you a perspective and some knowledge that you may have not known. The hidden history of Massachusetts. So while y'all there are protesting about some statues, y'all might as well make a clean sweep, not just through Boston, Massachusetts, but the whole country. Be like Jay-Z and Beyonce and go on a nationwide tour. It's everywhere. This is what this country is about. This is the Hour of Power with Shareef Hamid. Subscribe and share so we can lift the mind, bodies, and souls of our people. Spread these messages and lock up with your people. We got to organize because these people are coming. We got to organize. Now, someone will say, well, I thought you said in your other video to stay out of them places. Yeah, I did, but you don't know who and what was down there on Friday when I was there. Brothers was there and they were prepared. I'm going to just leave it at that. We were prepared if something jumped off. Not as organized as we should be, but we weren't as unprotected as you may think. So let's lock up and organize in our towns so we can be prepared if something jumps off. Subscribe and share. This is the Hour of Power. I leave you in peace as I came. And again, this is exposing the dark history of Boston, Massachusetts. Subscribe and share to the Hour of Power. I leave you in peace as I came. To my Christian family, praise the Lord. To my Muslim family, assalamu alaikum. To my Hebrew Israelite family, shalom. To my people in the streets, what's good to you. And to my Black conscious family, Hotep. Let's lock up and get ready. Peace.